I sell yarn for a company that paid me a salary.
Now, the mills that you were running, they were originally cotton mills?
No, I built every mill that I ran. There wasn't nothing. I've started every mill from that I ran from right from the floor. Didn't have nothing in it. I never had the luxury of walking in the mill. It was already run. I never had the luxury of walking into a mill that was already running. That's the easiest thing. I had to start every damn one I ever run.
Now, your grandpa, they were cotton mills that he started, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, they all cotton mills, more or less. But he put cones in the gray mill, which was the first cone yarn mill in the South. That's why Gaston was the cone yarn center of the world. You didn't know that, did you?
No, sir.
We had more cone yarn mills here than anywhere.
Combs.
Comb,
Combs.
C-O-M-B-S.
Uh-huh.
That meant you comb the cotton after you carded it. You just made it better. And we had more cone yarn mills than anywhere in the world. Much less this country, anywhere in the world. We had more cone yarn spindles in Gaston County than anywhere in the world, just because he started the gray mill on comb yarns. Wait a minute, let me see.
Wait, you're hooked up. Let me take you down. What are you going to get?
I would see if my wife still got that newspaper article about what my grandfather's funeral. You would love to see that.
Okay.
You don't know about it, so I have to tell her. Yeah, they had put soldiers, National Guard, and put it on with machine guns and put them on top of mills to guard against the flying squadrons, they called.
What, the strikers?
Strikers, they were riding around the county on
Trying to
most.
unionize.
Yeah, trying to unionize, hollering about the stretch-out system, said they were making people run too many machines, which is the biggest damn lie in the world.
Well, who started that?
I don't know who started. They didn't get very far.
Look at this funeral.
They even closed the post office.
Now, were you around for this? No,
Oh,
no.
you
No.
weren't around for this.
I wasn't around, but
I didn't even know him until I came up here to teach school.
Hundreds of people pay last respects to dead citizens. Splendid tributes by Reverends G.H. Detweiler and J.E. Abernathy. Post office, mills, and business houses closed for service. Magnificent floral tributes laid to rest in Oakwood Cemetery.
Yeah. He died of appendicitis,
He died of appendicitis.
60 years old. They didn't know what to do with appendicitis. They operated on him and they didn't get him closed up. He went in peritonitis and died.
Great. You should hang this up.
No, we don't.
No?
We just soon keep things like that a secret.
You keep things like this a secret?
Not a secret, we just don't advertise.
Oh, okay. Huh. So your grandfather went with the first year education. He worked himself all the way up.
People used to ride it here from 50 miles away to see a man worth $5 a day. He was paid $5 a day. And wasn't nobody worth $5 a day. People ride 100 miles to see a man who's worth $5 a day.
That was your grandfather?
Mm-hmm.
He was being paid $5 a day.
Yeah. $25 a week. What the hell?
At what year?
1900.
What was he doing then?
He was running mills. Every mill that started in Gaston County, he had a hand in it somewhere along the line. Oh, he didn't keep making $5 a day. He got up to maybe $1,000 a day.
$1,000 a minute.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly will have a lot to talk to you about tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'll call you, okay?
You call me. Let me know what time you be here. 'Cause
Okay.
now I won't be here in the morning. You'll have to wait till tomorrow afternoon.
That's
About
fine.
I usually my wife comes after me about 12 now. Well, we're home about 12:30.
Okay. All right.
So you call me tomorrow
I'll
afternoon.
call you. Okay. And hopefully, we're going to be in Charlotte, and if everything works out, we'll come over here, okay?
Whatever.
Okay. If not, then it'll be sometime in the future.
Whatever
I
you
think-
want.
Okay, but I will call you,
You call me and let me know what you want me to do.
okay?
I can help you because I know more about what happened than anybody I know of. I know why we lost our mills. We went into Textiles Incorporated and we were vulnerable. We didn't have any banking connection that we should have had. And the bankers took advantage of us and drug us across the rope. And Mr. C. Park made a bad move. A fellow named Labe Jenkins, who was the first millionaire in Gaston County, went to Asheville and started a bank. He came down here to see Mr. Lee Robinson. He wanted to borrow $1 million. And Mr. Lee Robinson wasn't there. So Mr. Sam Boyce sent him up to Mr. C. Park and said, you go up to see C. Park. He says, Great C. Park's got millions of dollars laying here in the bank. He let you have $1 million. C. Park foolishly let him have $1 million without having a meeting of the board of directors. And damn, some of the stockholders wanted to put C. Park in jail. And Mr. Myers spoke up and saved him. So when Mr. Myers proposed the Textiles Incorporated, we had to go along with him because we owed it to him for having saved Sea Park. I'll never forget my father walked in our home up there in that big house one day and said to my mother, said, Mame, my mother's name was Mame, she said, Mame, I can sell out tomorrow for $5 million and still own the Myrtle Mill. We've got $2 million in the bank. Mom said, well, Orlando, why don't you do it? He said, what am I going to do about the Sea Park? He said, he couldn't make a living. He's going to be busted wide open. So we had still we could have got out with $5 million. And we still own the Myrtle Mill. During the war years, I could have made another $100 million easy. But things just didn't go right. We were always thinking about somebody else instead of thinking about ourselves. That's the way we've always been. I never thought about getting old and not having any damn money. I never saved any money. Didn't want any money. Money was made to spend as far as I was concerned.
Did you do a lot of traveling?
No. I have done considerable travel in my life, but I don't do it anymore. Oh, I haven't done considerable travel, but I've traveled enough. I've been around. I used to go to New York once or twice a month.
When you never took any pictures of the mills that you had?
I was always publicity shy. Didn't want any part of publicity.
And that mill that you were working in 1934,
Yeah.
did that one get bigger after that?
Oh yeah, we went finally moved down to Laurel, and we were producing 30,000 dozen a week of crochet cotton. I was buying 50,000 pounds of yarn a week.
And that was from that same shop that you had working in 34, that
Yeah.
small shop.
Yeah,
And what was that called?
North Carolina Cotton Mills.
Carolina Cotton Mill. Was that here in Gastonia?
Yeah. Well, when the strike was on, we only had the basement of the mill. The plant. We finally went. Then we finally moved to Laurel and took over a big plant down there.
And during that 34 strike, what was the name of the Firestone plant? Was it Firestone in 34?
Let's see. I don't know when Firestone bought that. No, it's Manville Jeans.
Now that's the one where the National Guard was right there, right?
No, not the one I remember. The National Guard was on the Rankin, Pinckney and the Rankin. That's where I remember the National Guard was down there in South Gastonia. Way down.
And I've seen pictures of the National Guard on top of the mills.
They had machine guns. In Belmont, a couple people got shot.
In 34?
National Guard shot a couple people, killed them. See, Belmont was consisted of the Lineburgers, the Stoves, and two different Stowe families. Down there, the Pinckney Stoves and the R.L. Stoves, and the Lineburgers. Now, the Lineburgers have sold all the mills, but the R.L. Stoves got the Pinckney Stoves sold theirs recently within the last year. So the only one that's still down there is the R.L. Stove. They got about 5 mills, I think. But Joe Lineburger had Mr. A.C. Lineburger started the first mill in Gaston County, Woodlawn.
Did your grandpa did you have a mill village for all the mills?
Oh yes, we had mill villages.
I've seen pictures I know that in Georgia, some of the mill villages, they had recreation facility for them.
Oh yeah,
social workers.
yeah, we had a damn community house in every damn planet. And that was a big deal to have. See who had the nicest community house.
And did you make a church for them too?
We built a church for them. Matter of fact, Battery Memorial right there, I personally furnished the carpeting in the pastor's study of that church in memory of my father, who gave him the church to start with. It was a Parkdale community house. They converted into Battery Memorial Methodist Church.
So that Parkdale mill that I drove up past, that was your mill?
At one time, we sold that to Mr. Robertson. But Mr. Kimball is running it now, and he owns it flat out now. And he's got 16 plants in Parkdale. He produces something like 5 million pounds a week. That's a lot of money. When you're talking about over $1 a pound.
Okay, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but I've enjoyed very much meeting with you.
Well, fine, Judy. I hope I haven't disappointed you.
Oh, no, not at all. The contrary. Somebody in Shelby?
No, it's Shelby Studio here in Gastonia.
Oh, it's a photograph.
Yeah, and it's tinted, and she tinted it up. I was president of the Gaston Country Club
You were president of the Gaston Country Club?
when that picture was made. about 45 years ago.
Did all the millmen belong to that country club?
Oh, yeah. Nice country club.
That's a beautiful picture. It looks like a painting.
Well, that's what it's supposed to look like, but it ain't no portrait. It's just a damn photograph that's been tinted.
So tell me, for the benefit of this tape, all these pictures are great. Why don't you tell me your full name?
All right.
And we'll start with, like we've been talking, your relationship to the whole textile business.
Okay. Well, I'm Charles Wetzell, Wetzell. Middle name happens to be Armstrong, and that was a reason for that, because of my grandfather, Armstrong, Charles B. Armstrong. I was named for him. That's where I got my Charles. He was one of the pioneers in the textile industry around Gastonia. Actually started, I guess, with his mills around 1905 to 1910. But he died in 1920, so he really was only very active in it probably less than 15 years. But at the time of his death, he was president of 14 mills. So he did a good selling job, although he just started out and lived on a farm. He was just a farm boy in his younger years.
And you told me that he didn't know anything about textiles.
None whatsoever. But then he heard that a few of these men around him, particularly over in Belmont, were starting some mills up. Looked like there was some money to be made. So he just started talking to some of the other businessmen around town. He said, why don't we put some money together and build some mills over here? And they said, well, Charlie, if you'll head it up, we'll do it. But we need somebody that's got some organizing ability. And he did have that, even though he knew nothing about textiles. So he agreed, and I don't know the full story of how he went about raising the money, but it must have been just that he was a very trustworthy person, and apparently knew how to organize things well, too. And they eventually, as I said, had about 14 mills. Now, they did lose most of those during the Depression years, and when I'm saying Depression years, I'm talking mainly the 30s. As you know, officially, I guess the Depression started after the stock market crash in 1928, but I remember it most vividly, I guess, during the 30s. Let's see, I was born in 1921, so by the time I went to high school in 1935, I mean, things were really at the bottom as far as finances around here. And at one time, it's obvious, I'm sure, my family was pretty well off when they had all those mills, but they lost all of that during the Depression years. They were subdivided into groups and sold for practically nothing. And my dad, who had been working for his father-in-law, Colonel Armstrong, continued to work for one of the groups called Textiles Incorporated that came about after these mills were dissolved. They formed another group of a few mills. But I just remember particularly that strike they had at what they called the Loray mills. It is still here in Gastonia under the name of Firestone now.
Now, was that the strike in 29 or
Yes.
the strike in 34?
29. I guess there was one in 34 also, huh? I'd forgotten about that. But anyhow, in 29 was when the chief of police was killed, Chief Adderholt. And he called in the National Guard. And I can remember as a kid seeing these soldiers camped around town. And of course, to me, that was exciting, but to my parents, it was rather frightening. You know, I didn't think of myself as being one of the mill owner's children, but I guess that's what my parents were afraid, that these striking people could lash out in some way and try to harm one of their kids or something. I'm sure that went through their mind.
Now, you didn't think of yourself as a mill owner's child, but you
No,
did.
I didn't.
What was your access to the mills as a young man, young child, boy?
I guess mainly it was through schools that all the mill kids went to the same school that I did, and both in grammar school and in high school. I only had a few grammar schools. I say all of them. I shouldn't say that. All went to the same school. We didn't. We had several. But a lot of them were in school with me and some of my friends. I don't remember visiting in their homes. Occasionally I would have some of them out to my house. I had a pony, and I'd let them ride my pony. They thought that was great stuff. But as far as the
Tell me, was there a real division among the mill kids?
Oops,
Division
sorry.
between the mill kids and you?
There must have been
Did you feel
some. I felt it a little bit, yes. They would tease me if my clothes looked too fancy. And my mother tended to overdress me. And in fact, one day she sent me with you know what a little Lord Fauntleroy suit is? Sent me with that on, and they beat me up. And I came home with that thing all tattered and torn, and I just begged and pleaded for them not to ever put that back on me, and they didn't. So I'm sure I did get some teasing, but I was pretty scrappy, and you know, if it ever got to a scrap, I could usually hold my own, and I guess I earned their respect that way. And we were mostly friendly with each other. And no, I don't remember too much distinction, although I'll say again, I really had very little to do with them except at school. I rarely saw them in their homes and rarely had them in my home.
Did you, because your family worked in the mill, did you go down to the mill as a child?
No, they never worked in the mill, as I told you. The office was downtown. The mills were out from town. And I don't remember ever setting foot in one of the mills. It's odd, but I really have no recollection of it until, hey, I was a teenager and I had a summer job.
What year was that?
That would have been 37, 38, about then. And my main impression then was it was awfully hard work, and I sure didn't want to ever have to work in one of these mills for a living. That was the main impression I got. And they were poorly paid. I don't remember now what the wages were, but I'm sure at the lowest point of the Depression, I doubt if they made more than 25 cents an hour. Mr. Gray could probably tell you more about that. But did you talk about that with him?
Some. He did, yeah. He said they paid them the least that they could.
Yeah, right. And real early on, had children working in the mills. Of course, that was true up north, too. A long time ago, they had those sweatshops where children and people were working odd hours, long hours, longer than they should. But our mills here, after we went through that strike, which, by the way, was instigated by a communist, I'm trying to remember his name, we can look it up in a minute, you can read about him.
Fred Beale?
Fred Beale, correct. That's a good memory. And he inspired them to strike, and of course he later skipped, Beale had arrested him implicated him as part of the death of our police chief who was killed during that strike. And he skipped Beale and skipped the country and went back to Russia. But then he came back here years later and said he believed he'd rather be a prisoner in America than a free man in Russia. I don't know what's happened to him. I'm sure he's dead now. That's a long time ago. The relationship, though, generally between workers and employers around Gastonia has been good. Very few, if any, of the mills are unionized, even to this day. Very few unions.
Why do you think that's so?
I just think it's because of the fairly close relationship between the mill owners and the workers that they've always felt like, you know, they could go right up to the president of the company and talk to him if they had a complaint about something. I used to, until I retired, I worked at Belmont as vice president of sales for a group of mills called the R.L. stove mills over there. And
So you went into textiles too.
oh yes, even though my college degree was in English from the military college, the Citadel. So I really hadn't planned on going into textiles, but after the war and I came back to Gastonia, it's about the only opportunities that were here. And I knew a lot of people, some of the men in the textile industry that I talked to just to get advice, and had several offers. So I just took one of them.
You stayed
And
with it.
I did work in the mills from 1945 to about 50. I was in training to be a supervisor. But there again, I kept thinking back to that summer I spent when I was in college in the mill. I just decided that wasn't for me. It had to be a better way to make a living. So I had an opportunity to go into sales, still in the textiles. So I took it in 1950 and been back in the mill since. Oh, babe, that looks pretty.
That's gorgeous.
Isn't that nice?
That is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very pretty.
Now, back to the 30s. Do you,
Mhm.
so your father was working in the office?
Right.
Okay. Now, but he was directly involved with the mills, I suppose.
Well, in the like the bookkeeping end of it, they did the payrolls in the office, and ordered all supplies, stuff like that. He was more or less over that part of the business. And the mills were only running, just part time, and he wasn't making much money, even though he was an officer in the companies. Because when it came time for me to go to college, they just really didn't know how they were going to get the money. When just, 10 years before that, or 15 years anyhow, they could have bought one of the colleges probably. They were so well to do.
Was that real common around here? Did a lot of people lose everything?
A lot of them did, but it's amazing how some of them held on to their mills. Of course, with Colonel Armstrong, he had a lot of other people involved with him. He was not the sole owner like some of these others around here. It was usually just one or two men. And they could pull their horns in and ride out things like that better than a big group like my granddad had. And they owed so much money, too. I'm sure they borrowed to the hilt. So that was another reason for their downfall. But the group that bought them out, three of the mills have just been within the last year. Three of the buildings have been torn down, and there's a shopping center where this Clara mill I was telling you about, the name from my mother, the Clara, the Armstrong, and the Dunn were the names of these three plants. And those bricks that I was telling you about in the restaurant, it came out of one of them. But that site is still, it's just a shopping center now.
Are you talking about the Lorraine?
Yeah, we did. Oh, yeah, show her that.
What is
My
this?
sister deals in antique silver, and she came across that. And I have not tried to investigate to see why in the world they issue the spoon.
What does it say? Lorraine Mill?
Lorraine Mills, Gastonia, North
Oh,
Carolina.
that's why. I wonder what
And
the occasion
why in
was.
the world they did that.
I remember that you had this, but I'd sure forgot it.
I keep thinking I'm going to ask
Yeah.
them and try to find
Probably
out.
the silver anniversary of the founding of it, maybe.
Isn't that something?
I bet.
But I've never heard of it anywhere.
And
Where'd
what
you
is
find
that?
it?
In Wilmington, Delaware.
Blanche, does that say,
Yes.
does that say Jewel?
Jewel.
Yeah.
That's a new
That the person's name that
Yes,
owned it?
yes.
Well, maybe they gave these out to maybe the officers of maybe they gave these out to the families who
Could be.
maybe they might have given this out to employees.
But it wound up in Wilmington, Delaware at a
Yes,
silver sale.
yes. So I keep thinking I'll ask
I'd forgotten about it.
Did your grandfather have anything to do with the Loray Mill?
No, no. That was the Gray family, the Loves and the Gray. That's where they got the Loray. Love and Gray. Combination of those two. No, he didn't. I don't think he was on
No,
the board of that.
That strike in '29, which is actually a little bit before the time that we're looking at.
Yes,
Was that a strike all over the mills, or was that just at that one mill?
just that one mill. Now, that surprised me too. I don't know why they didn't. I guess it was by far the biggest one in Gastonia, and they figured if they could unionize that one, that, you know, the others would follow.
Now,
That's my guess.
in '34, there was a general strike.
Okay,
recall
I
this?
don't remember that
Okay,
very well.
this was all over the country.
Oh, all over the country.
Right.
Textile strike.
Right.
Is that what Mr. Gray was telling you? Or did you just know that from your
We
reading?
talked about it. We talked about a lot of things, but
Yeah.
that's a period of time that one thing that our movie is really addressing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if that was anything that you remember, because you were a teenager then.
Yes, yeah, I would have been. 13 years old, yeah. Oh, I guess, see.
Now they brought the National Guard in for that too.
Did they? I remember that only vaguely. I'll tell you an interesting.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
okay,
sorry. You
that's
got me
okay.
hooked up.
I do.
Can you turn it off?
I
just a
can,
minute
of
there?
course.
The textile business, yes, has been the major economy here for ever since Gastonia was founded. See, this is not an old city. Here's our centennial was held in 1977, so it was just 100 years old then. Founded in 1877.
And was it founded around mills?
Actually, it was mainly because the railroad came through here. This county seat was in Dallas at 5 miles north of here, not on the Southern Railroad line. But when they built the Southern Railroad through here to Charlotte, there was a little, I don't know, crossroads here already. And I guess they had chosen the name of Gastonia. But it didn't start growing until the railroad was finished. And then very soon after that, the mill started. I think the first mill was probably built about 1880 something, somewhere around there, 90.
And did that produce most of the revenue for the town?
Oh yes, by far. At one time there was some gold mining in Gaston County. I don't know whatever happened to them. Apparently the grade of the gold just wasn't good enough to make it worthwhile to continue mining it.
But maybe you could tell how did that what role did the mills play in Gastonia?
Well, it was certainly
How far-reaching was it?
locally the whole economy revolved around them. A lot of our leaders came from the mills. Like my grandfather was president of the mill, but also mayor of the town. Excuse me. Take us off now. Let me get
You
up.
want to go get a drink of water? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. Were you familiar with the mill villages as a child? As a young
I knew they were there. I was more familiar with them right after World War II. As I told you, my first job was working in the mills, and Blanche and I started. We lived on several mill villages in our early years of our marriage, and some of them were fairly nice, some not so nice. These were mainly, I think it was because these are pretty low-paid people, and they just couldn't afford to do much to fix up their houses. And the mill owners did the necessary, and that was about all. I mean, they wanted to keep them neat, and they did. And, you know, if the roof leaked, they'd fix that. And they had indoor plumbing and all, but it was pretty meager living. But they were so close together, the people on those villages really seemed to enjoy the association with each other. And they'd have something going on all the time. At any of these villages, I remember one in particular where I worked in Wetzell, just south of Charlotte. Very few of them had telephones in their houses, their mill houses. I had one in my house. I was the superintendent, so I had one in my house. But come over to use my phone for emergencies and other things, you know. So I had to be sort of the doctor, the lawyer, had to help with squabbles that they had amongst themselves because this was just a little town. It had about 2 or 3 policemen and hardly any thing else going on in the town. So they had to do their own amusement. They would have dances. Usually each mill village had some kind of an assembly hall provided by the mill owners. Recreation center, you'd call it today, but they always had some place to go of that sort. And particularly at Christmas, it seems that the mill owners still do, many of them still do, but in the past they really made a big to-do over Christmas, giving them a basket of fruit and filling stockings for the children with toys and fruit and candy and maybe. And the same group that I'm telling about that I work for, Oil Stowe Mills, they still do that every Christmas. Mr. Stowe, the father of these young men that run it now, that was just such a big thing with him that his sons have carried that on, that tradition. And I've read enough about my grandfather to know that he would go to the community house, is what they called it, at his mills. He built that early on so they would have a place to gather. And he would go out and at least talk to them as often as he could and try to get to know them. At least they'd see him and know that he had their interests at heart. Now, don't ask me why they didn't pay him more. I guess it was just because they couldn't get any more for the goods that they made. If they charged more, they'd start losing. I mean, if they paid more to the employees, they'd probably go broke because they couldn't sell the yarn for any more. The mills moved from up north down south right around the turn of the century because of the high cost up north, and that was mainly labor. And they just found it was cheaper labor down here, which when they first came, people down here were so desperate for any kind of job that it seemed good to make 25 cents an hour rather than nothing an hour. But then it became apparent that they were really not treated very well, quite honestly, in that regard, around the early 1900s. Now that improved by the 30s. The treatment was improved. The wages hadn't improved a whole lot, but by then the Depression was here and nobody was paying high wages. I guess the automotive industry was probably the only one that paid decent wages back in that period of time.
Do you think people here really respected cotton mill workers?
Respected them? That's hard to say. People, rest of the people in Gastonia, probably not, because, well, frankly, they were on the bottom of the ladder as far as any kind of social life, or they dressed poorly because they didn't have any money. It was hard to look up to them too much, even though I'm sure we're aware that it wasn't their fault. I mean, the struggles they were having. You know, you could say, well, they should have risen above that, but they had nowhere else to go. Most of them came from out of the mountains down here to work in the mills. That's another story that somebody ought to write someday if they could dig into the history of that, because if you go back far enough with a lot of these people that have worked in the mills for any length of time, they almost all say they came from the hills originally. And that's a part of this accent that seems to be peculiar to Gastonia. not so much an accent, but the way they pronounce certain words.
Like what?
Fire, F-I-R-E, is far. Far place. You build a far
Now,
in
do
the
you
far.
talk like that?
No, I don't. No. But the mill, anybody that's lived around Mill Village very long does. And nice, white, instead of white, it's white. Nice is nice. Ice. And Blanche and I both tutor in the literacy program here at Gastonia. So obviously these people, I have a young man that I tutor, he was just here this afternoon for 2 hours. He, grew up around the mill villages here. And I don't
Did his
try to,
parents work in the mill?
yes, yeah, I know his wife's parents did. I think his parents, his father was just a real no-goodnik, and that's one reason he dropped out of school when he did.
How old is this?
He's now like 35 years old, can't read. And but he's got the incentive, and he's been working with me. I've been working with him for about a year now, and he's learning. He gradually is.
And you say you don't try to what?
Correct the way he pronounces some of his words. That's so instilled in him, and he hears it every day at home, I'm sure. So there's no point in me trying to correct him. I just want to be able to pick up a book and read the words. If he doesn't pronounce it exactly right, I don't figure that's very important. But there is a peculiar, I think, accent that is found around Gastonia. You're talking about not respecting, or how did you respect mill people? Those were just signs that just pointed them out almost immediately.
What about
mean,
the lint?
The lint head, heard them talk about a lint head. That's another thing. When they would come to school, or you'd see them on the street, you'd know that they worked in a cotton mill, because they'd have this lint in the hair, all of them. That's from the cotton. You know what lint is, just little fibers. Nowadays, the cotton mills have a cleaning system, though, that gets rid of all that lint. It doesn't fly around there like it used to be. But, yeah, we call them lint heads.
Did you say that to me?
Yeah, I'm sure I did. Hey, you lint head. And he'd say, hey, you city slicker. I think that's what they called me. But, if you name call him, but if it didn't get any worse than that, that wasn't too bad, was it? But, or maybe we just mainly referred to them among ourselves as the lint heads.
What was the feeling among the community about them of organized labor?
Well, there was opposition to it. All we had heard about was some of the unions up north where there had been a lot of gangsterism involved with it, or at least the mob, maybe that's what I'm trying to say. So there was a rather unsavory group of people that were trying to start these unions. Well, that was our thinking. We know that there were a lot of fine union leaders, and we didn't want them coming down here telling us how to run our mills, with that attitude. And that's pretty much true today.
Did you hear that a lot?
Yes, sure. Yeah. You want those people coming down here running our mills? We can run them ourselves. And, of course, they would say to the people, the workers, listen, if you don't like working here, go somewhere else. But they had no place else to go. I mean, I know that now, but I guess I didn't at that time. But they, most of what I'm really relating to you is more, I guess, of what I've heard over the years rather than what I vividly remember myself. I don't have real vivid recollections of anything good or bad about the mill people or the mills themselves. I know I never went in a mill till about my senior year in high school. I don't remember visiting on a mill village. Well, I did in high school. I had a good friend whose father was superintendent of one of the mills. Anyway, I went in his home often. but that was always a nice. The superintendent always had a pretty nice home. What were you gonna say?
It's interesting to me that you, like a lot of other people, they remember the strike in 29, the one in 34, and it was a big deal.
Yeah,
It's just,
yeah. I don't know. And that was nationwide,
yes,
you
sir.
say,
Uh-huh.
and it was all. It wasn't just textiles, you say.
Oh, it was just textile.
Was just textiles. I'm sorry, I don't. It was 34. I was, in high school, I guess. I was about to start high school in here.
It lasted about a month.
That's that all.
Yeah.
September of 34. Mr. Gray didn't remember it either,
Oh, he remembers some.
did he?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, these, let's see if there's anything else here that would be of any use to you. Have you seen this book?
No, I haven't.
Well, of course, that's just pictures.
Those pictures that you have of the Mill Village, are those recent pictures that you took? Photo album?
Yes.
So that's still standing.
Oh, sure, yeah. Would you like to see some of those, maybe? No?
This is such a wonderful book. The way you put it together is just really
Well,
something.
my wife did most of this, putting it together. But really, I intended this as my mother's book on her life, but her father was such an important part of her life that I've included a lot of his stuff in here, too. I ought to have a
pictures
separate
were
book
at the
on him.
beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right
There
here.
we go. Now,
Those houses at Clara Street. This is Garrison Boulevard, see right there. And that's the main east-west, I guess, road through downtown Gastonia.
and which mill did they,
That was
these
probably
houses
the
from?
Clara
it's called the
Clara Mill, but it's one of them I've told you was torn down for the shopping center.
Yeah. Was that
The
open
shopping
in the 30s?
center is right back in here.
Was that still working in the 30s?
Yeah, sure.
That was, he hadn't lost it then.
He had lost it.
He
He
had.
died, you remember, in 20,
Yeah.
my grandfather. His sons kept it for about another 5 or 6 years. They sold it, but my Uncle Clyde Armstrong stayed on as one of the officers of these three mills, the Clara, Dunn, and the Armstrong mill. These.
Is your uncle still alive?
No. They've all died. And so the CDA, as they call it, Clara Dunn Armstrong, he was an officer in that group. I think they just wanted the people that bought it out. It was a Jewish family named Goldberg. I think they wanted somebody with the Armstrong name up front, so they had him in the office up front there. So I'm sure it must have been a part of that village, because, these are on privately owned homes now. They don't belong to any village now. But that's what they look like when they were in the village.
Yeah.
Now in Belmont, you can see hundreds of them, 10 miles from here. As I told you, they're still owned by the
Now,
Stowe
if
Group.
the company owned the house,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of control was there over the family? I mean,
You had to work in the mill, of course, to be able to rent the house. It's cheap. It's like $1 a room or something. I guess it's more than that now. But I can remember when that was the going rate, was $1 per week per room. And I'm sure it's higher than that. But yes, you had to be an employee. And I'm sure you did back in those 30s days too. I think back then in the 30s, almost all the mills around here owned their houses. Have you asked anyone that?
Mr. Gray, they did then too. But I think by that time, Mr. Gray didn't have as many mills as they had once had.
That's
Very
right.
similar situation to your grandpa.
Right. That's correct. They lost a bunch of them too. You need to be somewhere else, I expect, don't you?
Yeah, I keep on looking at my watch.
That's fine.
I don't mean to.
No, that's fine.
I need to go to Charlotte. I need to drive to Charlotte in just a
Okay.
little while.
Okay.
Your photographs and your book and your way of explaining a lot of this is great.
Well,
So what I generally do is I let my director that I work for know about what I found, and if it's okay with you, as well as we have enough time. Can we come back here?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
We have a video camera.
Mhm.
There's 3 people beside myself, the director who's from Winston-Salem,
Mhm.
his son who runs the camera, and another gentleman from Winston-Salem.
Mhm.
And we were just talking very similar about the same things we just talked about.
Mhm. Well, I would surely try to contact either Smyer or Robinson in particular, those two. And you can tell them that I suggested that you call them.
Is that gold watch anybody's? Was that your
Oh, yes.
grandfather's?
Yeah, that was my grandfather, Wetzell. He was a jeweler by trade and did the engraving on that, yeah. Yeah, he engraved that.
That's lovely.
I think it's to my father, and it didn't say
William
that.
L. Wetzel.
Yeah, that
from
was my
father.
dad.
That's
From-
just something.
Yeah. What date is that?
1903.
Oh, 3, okay. Yeah, he engraved that. That's one of the few things that I have with his engraving on it. So, yeah, my dad's father
You've been
was
really saving history here, haven't
Yeah, try. Blanche says I do too much of that, but we're just back from a family reunion out in Kentucky. Had a great time out there, and I got about, I don't know, a couple hundred pictures that we just got back, and videos. I take, I've got a camcorder. Take a lot of videos myself.
Now, who were these mill workers that you thought I might want to talk to?
Oh, well, I just have these names over in Belmont and around.
Now,
You want some
they
of
work
them?
now or they're retired?
I'm not sure. I think that this fella Wright still works some. He's there in their 70s, all of them. Because I asked, I said, now, they'd have to be in their 70s to have had some personal knowledge about the 30s.
Right.
I would try this. I didn't get his phone number. I thought I did. All right. Must have it on another sheet.
What's his first name? Woodrow?
Woodrow. Wait a minute. I've got an